10 MMA fighters who got seriously damaged, Part 2. We all know how dangerous MMA is. Today, in this video, we are going to see MMA fighters who got seriously damaged in their fights. Sometimes a certain few get hurt more than others for any number of reasons. As we learn more and more about head and brain trauma in combat sports, for every answer we seem to discover, there's two more questions. One danger it seems to finally be getting the attention it deserves is that of SIS, or second impact syndrome, a frightening situation that rarely passes without some tragic sign of its visit. Here, fighters fight with their opponents with no holds barred and ultimate fighting. This kind of fighting makes it more dangerous than other fights. Here, the fighter can beat the opponent in whatever way he wants and as much as he can. This rule has led to several fatal damages in the fightings. A report shows that about 10 people have been killed in MMA fights. Don't you think this makes the game a challenge of life and death? And is it worth it? Please comment your thoughts below. Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. He fought his last match and lost via submission to Fabricio Verdum on June 8, 2013. Sometimes how much damage a fighter has taken cannot be tallied just by the KO or TKO losses on his record, and such is the case of Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. He took a serious beating at the hands of Fedor Emelianenko in their first bout, which was a decision loss, and that saw his head bounce off the canvas with brutal shots in the first round. Then, outside of the damage that comes from heavy strikes, he had his arm completely broken by Frank Mir. But he's also taken some serious punishment in his victories as well. He was slammed on his head by Bob Sapp, blasted by Mirko Krokop-Filopovic for nearly their entire fight, and was dropped with a head kick by Heath Herring in their rubber match. It seems that a good portion of his career has been built around taking damage, a noble feat in the fight game, but punishing nonetheless. Chuck Liddell. Chuck fought his last fight and KO lost to Rich Franklin on June 12, 2010. Nearly everyone knows about the career of Chuck Liddell. One of the purest fighters to ever compete in MMA, the Iceman always came to throw down. He was one of the few fighters totally comfortable with living by the sword that would one day fell him. When the end came, it was a string of hard KO losses that prompted him to heed the urging of Dana White, and no one deserved the promotion into a cozy life with a promotion any more than Liddell. Mirko Krokop-Filopovic. He had his last fight with a submission victory over Shinichi Suzukawa on December 31, 2012. Although he was on a winning streak in 2013 for the K1 promotion, Mirko Krokop has taken some horrendous damage in MMA competition. Few people ever forget the head kick KO that Gabriel Gonzaga landed. His last 3 fights in the UFC saw him stopped each time via KO or TKO against men who wouldn't have lasted 2 rounds with him in 2004. If Filopovic decides to finish out his fighting career in K1, no one would blame him. Alistair Overeem. He fought his last fight with a KO loss to Antonio Bigfoot Silva on February 2, 2013. Although his most recent loss came after a long string of victories with 11 wins and 1 no contest, Alistair Overeem has taken some serious lumps in his career. It seems that whenever Overeem loses via KO or TKO, he's getting seriously clobbered. His last fight saw him take unrelenting damage against the cage before he finally fell to the floor. He was seriously hammered by Chuck Liddell and Mauricio Shogun Rua, not to mention the thumping he took from Sergei Haratonov. He's also suffered 3 defeats via the dreaded KO/TKO in his kickboxing career. We'll find out how well he bounces back when he fights Travis Brown, but we do know that a fighter only has so many times he can have his card punched before he begins to see his ability to compete diminished. Renato Babalu Sobral. His last fight, TKO loss to Jacob No on June 19, 2013. Perhaps a person many would expect to be on a list like this, Renato Babalu Sobral has seen more than a few brutal TKO and KO moments laying upon his table. Sobral has lost 4 of his last 6 bouts, all losses coming via KO and TKO, something that speaks to the notion of the damage that is accumulating in the latter stage of his career. As he's been fighting for 16 years, one can only imagine the damage that he and the others on this list have taken during training. At the age of 37, Sobral is a fighter's fighter, but one hopes that sooner rather than later he'll either find a way to adjust his style and protect himself or retire. Very few fighters can say they defeated Trevor Prangley, Mauricio Shogun Rua, and Jeremy Horn all in one night, but Sobral can. That kind of accomplishment should allow him to sleep soundly if he decides to retire anytime in the near future. Andrei Arlovsky had his last fight in a decision loss to Anthony Johnson on March 23, 2013. Some fighters seem cursed with what can charitably be described as a weak chin, but in the case of Andrei Arlovski, it might actually be a blessing. When Arlovski gets hit flush on the chin, he tends to go to sleep. Who could forget the sight of Arlovski laying face down, arms limp by his sides, after walking into a Hail Mary punch from Fedor Emelianenko? While it may be bad for his record, it may be good that he doesn't end up taking excessive beatings. Still, with 7 losses coming via KO and TKO, it can't be all that good. Jens Pulver. Last fight and submission loss to Masakatsu Ueda on April 5th, 2013. Sometimes having a big heart can be a detriment to a fighter in the latter stages of his career, and that seems to be the case for Jens Pulver. I have always loved watching Pulver fight. He's always so open and bare to the bone, but when he's in the cage or ring, you're seeing someone who is honestly committed. With a big, hard, easy smile, friendly demeanor, and an honest-to-God good guy, Jens Pulver has 8 KO, TKO losses on his record. I wouldn't care if he had 50. He's still one of my favorite fighters of all time. I just hope it never gets even close to that point. Gary Goodridge. Last fight, a TKO loss to Lyubomir Semeniov on December 17, 2010. Ever since Gary Goodridge made his debut in the UFC at UFC 8, you could just tell he was a man who didn't do anything the easy way. Now, 11 KO and TKOs later, Goodridge suffers from CTE, or pugilistic dementia, which he attributes mainly to his K1 career, where he suffered 14 losses via knockout or TKO. 90% of my injuries came from K1, where there's nothing but head trauma, head injuries over and over again, said Goodridge in an interview with MMAweekly.com in 2012. It's shocking to think of a man suffering 25 losses via some kind of knockout, but much like a former boxer and now trainer Freddie Roach, Goodridge simply accepts it as a part of the life he led as a fighter. Yoshiki Takahashi. His last fight was a KO victory over Kenichi Yamamoto on March 9, 2013. Some fighters hit a bad skid and take a concentrated amount of damage during a short period of their career and find they cannot recover that winning form. Others have been fighting for so long that they have simply put their body on the line as far more times than that should be allowed. That's not to say that I do not appreciate the fights Yoshiki Takahashi has given us, because I do. I've been following the sport since UFC 3, and I remember getting very excited about Takahashi's entrance into the UFC 12 tournament. His fight with Walid Ismail, while odd on one hand, is still a treat to watch. But the man has been rendered unconscious, or teetering on the brink, or badly hurt to the body no less than 16 times in his career, a career that started on September 21st, 1993, that continues to this day. Honestly, I'm still puzzled as to why he's allowed to fight. At one point in his career, from the middle of 2007 to the middle of 2010, he was defeated by KO or TKO 5 times in a row. Kazushi Sakuraba. Last fight, a submission loss to Jan Cabral on September 24, 2011. Save for Gary Goodridge, I cannot think of any single fighter who has suffered more damage in their career than Kazushi Sakuraba. He was annihilated by Vanderlei Silva in their first fight, suffered a dislocated shoulder in their second bout, and was knocked out cold in their third and final fight. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Who can forget how badly swollen and bloody his face was after eating multiple knees to the head in his fight with the much larger Ricardo Arona? Perhaps the final sign of the damage he had absorbed was seen in his loss to Marius Aramskis. A little over 2 minutes into the opening round, Sakuraba's ear was actually falling off. Fighting is no doubt a passion for the men and the women who step into the ring or cage. It must be, or why else? Why would you do it at all? But when you actually start to fall apart, there can be no doubt that the time to exit the stage has officially arrived. So this was about the 10 MMA fighters who faced severe injuries in their lives. Many of them are cured and got back in the ring again. They are highly spirited and dedicated towards their work, and they can't live without it, even if the severe damages hurt them. For people, it may be a match for entertainment, but it even costs the lives of some of the fighters. That's it for today. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more content just like this.